For decades, the single most important number in global finance, the number that set the price of hundreds of trillions of dollars in loans, was not measured or calculated or observed. It was, in effect, guessed. Every morning, a small group of bankers were simply asked to estimate it, and the whole world took their word for it. The number was called LIBOR. In plain terms, it was meant to answer one question: what interest rate are banks charging to lend to each other right now? That rate matters because it becomes the baseline for everything else. Your mortgage, a company's loan, a student's debt, countless contracts were priced as LIBOR plus a little more. So it is worth asking how this all-important number was actually found, not from real trades. Each morning, a panel of big banks was asked, in essence, at what rate could you borrow today? They submitted their estimates, the extremes were trimmed away, the middle was averaged, and out came LIBOR. A number that steered the planet's finances, assembled from a handful of educated guesses. And when you say it plainly like that, it sounds insane, and it slightly is. We built the scaffolding of global lending on a daily poll of interested parties and simply trusted them to answer honestly. For a long time, astonishingly, it mostly worked because everyone assumed the banks had no real reason to lie. That assumption turned out to be very wrong. Because the banks answering the question also held enormous bets that depended on the answer. And so, in the years around the financial crisis, it emerged that traders had been nudging their submissions, a little higher here, a little lower there, to move LIBOR in the direction their bets needed. They were quietly tuning the number that priced the world in order to win. Sit with what that means, not a small fraud. Traders at major banks messaging one another to shade the single benchmark sitting underneath hundreds of trillions in contracts. Every mortgage and loan tied to LIBOR was, in tiny ways, being tilted by people with a direct stake in the outcome. The referee, it turned out, was betting on the game. And the reach was staggering. This one guessed, and sometimes rigged, number sat beneath an amount of money many times larger than the entire world economy. A rate assembled from estimates in a room each morning was quietly the gravitational center of global finance. When it was finally exposed, the fines ran into billions and trust in the whole arrangement collapsed. So the world set out to replace it. The new benchmarks, like SOFR, are built on a completely different principle, not what banks say, but what they actually did. They are calculated from real, recorded transactions, actual borrowing that genuinely took place. You cannot guess, and you cannot easily rig, a number that is simply a record of trades that really happened. But swapping the foundation of every loan contract on Earth quietly, while it is all still running, is a colossal task. It took years of endless contract rewriting, and only recently has LIBOR finally been retired for good. An entire financial system had to be gently lifted off one number and set down onto another without anyone falling through the gap. Which leaves a lesson worth keeping. For decades, the most consequential number in finance was an honor system guess, and it held only as long as everyone chose not to abuse it. When the incentive to cheat grew large enough, the guess was quietly bent. We learned, expensively, that a number which steers the world should be a record of what happened, not a promise about it. So the next time you hear about an interest rate benchmark, remember what one of the biggest ones really was. Not a measurement, but a morning estimate, offered by the very banks with the most to gain from the answer. For decades, the price of trillions rested on a number. A handful of bankers simply guessed and, when it suited them, quietly shaded in their own favor.